Now, the last thing that now we need to focus on after showing the different types of the M&E frameworks that we have, we definitely also need to emphasize a few things and how do we actually use these M&E frameworks in M&E planning. And the way we use M&E frameworks in planning is by the use of what you call the logical framework approach. And you know that the logical model is a very, very key framework in project planning and project design so that we can actually be able to plan the projects very well. And so this logical framework approach, as most of you may know, was developed early, and we actually know that it was developed in the 1960s as a method that was used by international development organizations when assessing, monitoring, and evaluating projects and programs. And nowadays, it is a standard use. It's standardly used across different organizations, and it was developed in response to poor planning and monitoring for development projects. So, so it was something that was very, very useful in terms of ensuring that projects can actually be able to develop good planning and ensure that they can actually be able to monitor the development projects as expected. Now, it is also a tool of choice that has been used by many development agencies and also by the international donor community. And so it is a tool of choice that has actually been used by many development agencies and also in the international donor community. And it is also used for planning, for approving and for evaluating and also for monitoring the projects. So it's basically very, very useful for ensuring that we can actually be able to plan, we can actually be able to approve, we can actually be able to evaluate, and we can actually be able to monitor the projects as expected. So, so it's very, very useful for planning. It's also very, very useful for approving, and it is also very, very useful for evaluating and monitoring projects as well. And it is also a very, very powerful technique and deserves much more application than just in the international community. And so it is important to make sure that we are able to look at it so that we will be able to have the use of it in a much more wider application as expected. Now, please note that sometimes the logical framework, which is just one of the frameworks that we have just mentioned earlier on, that's the Logframe and the logic model and the logical framework approach are often confused. The difference between the two, because the Logframe is that matrix that we are able to create, whereas the logical framework approach is a project design or a planning process. And so it's important for us to be able to see that difference. Most people are not able to see that difference. So it is important that I highlight to you that there is normally a difference when you talk about the logical framework and when you talk about the logical framework approach. So the process is the logical framework approach. The document or the output is the logical framework. And so the process precedes the document. So this process is conducted so that you can actually be able to have the document or the output, which is the logical framework. So it is important to ensure that the logical framework approach, or the LFA, is the process that normally ends with the log frame as the product. And so the LFA process therefore begins with a number of steps. So the first step that we normally are able to undertake is the situational analysis. And so we can actually be able to conduct situational analysis. Then secondly, we are able to go into stakeholder analysis. And so stakeholder analysis becomes the next thing that we need to be able to do. And then the other thing is the problem analysis as well. And then again, also proceed to objective analysis and finalize with the alternative analysis as expected. And the results of these processes are therefore what we actually put as a logical framework matrix or a log frame. And so these are the results that we are able to put as the matrix. And so, so this therefore provides the product for the logical framework approach as we know. And so the log frame therefore becomes the 4x4 matrix, and I know most of us are familiar with this. We have used this matrix a lot of the times. We have been able to see how we're able to show on one end the goal, the outcomes, the outputs, and the activities. And we are able also to indicate for each of those components, we're able to indicate the verifiable indicators, and then the means of verification, and then what are the important assumptions or risks that we have for each of those components that we are able to add there. So it is important for us to be able to look at that. Now, the log frame matrix, therefore, has some of these components, and most of us are familiar with this. We are able to we have been able to see these components as we have shown them in that diagram. The goal, the impact is looking at the long-term results. The outcomes looks at the short-term results that we expect from the project. The output looks at the deliverables or the immediate results. The activities basically what you will do so that you can deliver the outputs. The indicators of achievement looks at how are we going to know that we have actually been successful. So those are the indicators of achievement. Then again, the other one is the means of verification. How are we going to check that our reported, results? And then the other thing is also the risks and the assumptions. That is what assumptions underlie the structure of the project, and what is the risk that that they will not, what risk is there that they will actually not be able to prevent. So it is important to make sure that we are able to achieve that. Again, also don't let the terminologies confuse you. I think it is important to make sure that we don't use the terminologies to be able to confuse us. And so it is important that we are able to understand those terminologies. And so in other words, why I'm bringing this terminology is because different logical frameworks in different organizations use different terminologies. You can see Australian Aid, CARE, European Union, Food and Agriculture Organization, NORAD, USAID, World Bank, World Vision. You can see for USAID, like I showed you earlier, they talk about strategic objectives, they talk about intermediate results, outputs, activities, inputs, as we mentioned earlier on. But different organizations will have different ways of expressing the logical framework components. Now, so we have talked about M&E frameworks, and maybe one of the best ways to summarize is just to be able to say that we have seen the conceptual framework is simply an interaction of various factors, and the results framework is a logically linked program objectives or results. And then the logical model is basically the logical link between inputs, processes, outputs, and outcomes. And in terms of program management or project management, then it helps determine which factors the project will actually be able to influence if you're looking at the conceptual framework. And in terms of the basis for monitoring and evaluation, not really, it's not utilized as a basis for monitoring and evaluation, but it's just simply used to help explain the results. But these other two, the results framework and the logical framework, they are used in monitoring and evaluation. That's why we're saying they are under basis of monitoring and evaluation, we are saying, yes, this can be used. And again, also to show the causal relationship between program objectives or project objectives, or rather show the causal relationship if it's a logic model, the causal relationship between inputs and the objectives of the project or program. So, so it is important to be able to note some of those things as we come to an end. Now, this is an actual M&E framework populated, and it is just able to show us both the results and also how we will be able to collect data, what will be the data sources, what will be the frequency, what will be the responsible, and what will be the form of reporting. So I've also included this as a sample M&E framework for you guys to be able to utilize in your learning as well. So there are common difficulties when it comes to formulating M&E frameworks. Sometimes some of those difficulties will be like choosing the indicators that will truly measure the project results. It's always giving M&E professional challenges. And also, there will also be some challenges when it comes to mixing some key elements such as project results and activities. So we will always be able to have some challenges there. And also some challenges also can come across when we are trying to define the project activities in the project design that may not logically lead to the desired results as expected. So those are some of the challenges that we can actually be able to have when it comes to M&E frameworks. So they're easy to develop, but then again, sometimes they can give us some of these challenges when you're trying to come up with the M&E framework as expected. So now what we will need now to do is just to be able to have a feedback session. I know we have learned a lot by looking at those types of frameworks that are there. So let's have a feedback session in